This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. It's time for me to react to you guys' hot takes, a ton of them to get into. So let's just jump into it. We're going to start with the Joe Flacco versus DTR debate. A lot of interesting comments in this video for both sides of the argument, so I do want to go through it. Corey Johnson says, I think that because we're still in the hunt for the playoffs, you can roll with Flacco until he shows he can't handle it. Then you can put DTR in if necessary. I feel better about the vet leading this team late in the season, and he looked decent in his first game back. That's just how I look at it anyways. Now, this goes back to how I used to talk about the whole Jacoby Brissett thing. And I remember the conversation with the Jacoby Brissett thing was people are arguing for things that make them feel better without really acknowledging if that thing that makes them feel better actually makes the team better. Remember, people were making the argument that the Browns should trade for Jimmy Garoppolo or go get Baker Mayfield back instead of starting Jacoby Brissett, because Jacoby Brissett, to Browns fans at the time, was an unknown. And an unknown doesn't make you feel better. But that doesn't mean that the unknown isn't what's actually better for the team. Turned out having Jacoby Brissett was better than the alternative. Now, since we know about Jacoby Brissett, since we know about Josh Dobbs from last year, when we talk about putting in DTR, nobody wants to do it because it doesn't make them feel good about the quarterback situation. But that, again, does not guarantee that it's not better for the quarterback situation. Ultimately, the Browns drafted DTR in the 5th round, in my opinion, for a reason. They elevated him to backup quarterback for a reason. They made him the immediate starter once Deshaun Watson went down instead of PJ Walker, who had stepped in before, for a reason. And that reason is they believe in him. And when this coaching staff has put their foot down and said they believe in the quarterback for the most part, it's turned out good for this organization. And I understand that Flacco makes people feel better, but I think that we have to trust what the coaching staff feels like they see with DTR. Now, ultimately, if they feel like Flacco's a better choice than DTR, then I'll go with that. I trust what the coaching staff is going to go with because I think they have a good read on what will work and what they need to work on this offense, and they're not really caught up in all the other stuff with it. So we'll see what happens. But, you know, I would say I think there's a lot of people that are getting caught up in what makes them feel better versus what we know or versus an unknown, right? Like DTR's an unknown. We don't know what he's going to be. He's a rookie quarterback that makes a lot of people nervous, but he's also somebody that this organization has demonstrated a ton of trust in. And I think that's for a reason. And I don't think that this organization is one to make bad judgment calls when it comes to that kind of a thing, especially with backup quarterback. They've been pretty good with that since 2020. They've had some really good performances with backup quarterbacks. I think they've won a game with the backup quarterback every year Kevin Stefanski has been here. They won the game with Case Keenum in 2020. They won the game with one of them backups that they threw in there with Baker Mayfield. Well, no, they won the Baker Mayfield backup game was 2020. So with Case Keenum, they won it in 2021. And then they won the backup games with Jacoby Brissett, and they've won games with the backup this year. This team knows what they're doing when they call somebody to backup. And if they thought that DTR could be the backup at the beginning of the season, more so than Josh Dobbs, that tells me that there might be more to get out of there that we aren't seeing. And I have to trust their evaluation of it. Adair Morgan says Flacco is like a relief pitcher at this stage. People was complaining about DTR throwing too hard, and that was causing the wide receivers to drop the ball, but the wide receivers were dropping the ball with Flacco too. True. We have the highest drop rate in the NFL. The wide receivers need to step up. Not a fan of most of them on the team, but I only would like to keep next year is Tillman. I think we have to give a little slack to the wide receivers because, yes, the wide receivers are dropping the ball, but the wide receivers have had to change out the quarterback 4 times. If you change who's throwing the ball to any wide receiver room 4 times in a season, more than that, right? Because I'm not even counting the times that they went from, like, let's talk about quarterback changes, actually. You started with Deshaun Watson. So that's first, no change, 1. Then you had to go to PJ Walker. Okay, well, no. Then you had to go to DTR. My bad, I forgot about week 4. So then you had to go to DTR. It's 2 quarterback changes. Then you go from DTR to PJ Walker. That's 3 quarterback changes. Then you go from PJ Walker back to Deshaun Watson. Okay, cool. Then you go from Deshaun Watson back to DTR. That's 5 changes. Then you go from DTR to Joe Flacco. That's 6 changes. 6 times they've had to adjust to a different quarterback being in there than was before. That's going to take its tolls, and that's going to show itself in drop balls. I don't think that the drop ball percentage is a reflection of the wide receiver's ability to catch the ball. I think that's a reflection of the amount of times that the Browns have had to change quarterback this season. You change the quarterback 6 times anywhere, you're going to get drop balls. I promise you that. Next question comes from, the next comment comes from WWZ, who says, given this late in the season past the trade deadline, Flacco was a terrific find, but I consider him DTR's backup. If DTR can get a full week of practice in, then he would be my starter for sure. As far as success by the Browns, to me, all the defensive line, everything in Schwartz, defensive line is pass rush. Yeah, basically. That's a take I agree with. I think Flacco is just at this point better suited to be a backup. That doesn't mean that he can't provide value to you, but it's good to know, hey, if you have DTR out there and it does not look good with him for a week or 2, and it does not look like he's going to progress, it's really good to know that you have DTR, that you have Joe Flacco back there, because you know what Joe Flacco is. Vice versa, if you have Flacco in there, and let's say Flacco starts to age out of the role, and then you throw in DTR, I don't know if you can trust what you're going to get out of that spot as much as you could trust it vice versa. So I think it's a more practical way to go about it. It's not going to be what makes everybody super excited, because it seems to be a lot of momentum around Joe Flacco at this point. But I think there's more to consider than what most people are choosing to consider right now. Christian says, Flacco's performance on Sunday is a consequence of the Rams' defensive approach, limiting rushing production. DTR can do everything Flacco offers, and he's younger. I don't think that the gap between those two are as significant as some people make it seem like. I know that home defense is going to say Flacco pushed the ball downfield all game. He wasn't like Jacoby at all, man. He was aggressive and dictated the defense instead of the other way around. I think you're missing it here, Q. I don't think I'm missing it, to be honest with you. When I watched the film, I did not see a quarterback who was pushing the ball downfield and being aggressive with accuracy in that game. I saw a guy who threw a couple deep balls kind of as a bailout, not necessarily because he's being aggressive, just to throw the ball out of bounds, more or less than nothing. And then when he did throw the deep ball to take a shot, he had 3 of those, and none of those 3 throws were great throws. There was one that got caught by Elijah Moore. I thought it was more of a great play by Elijah Moore than anything. The other 2 pushed so wildly off target that they almost got intercepted, if not got intercepted. So I don't really think that he's the downfield ball pusher that you guys think he is at this point. And age is only going to make that show even more. Again, the eye in the sky don't lie. And I think a lot of people are ignoring some of that stuff right there because they want to feel good about it. And again, when it comes to the quarterback position, people will value how they feel versus what actually is the deal. All right. Part of the reason why people complain so much about Deshaun Watson is because they value how they feel versus what actually makes it better. Because for some people, Baker Mayfield made them feel better than Deshaun Watson, despite the fact that Deshaun Watson is a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield. It made them feel better. People will prioritize how they feel versus what actually can make you better. It's just a thing. I mean, I pointed this out all last year. I was right about it. We'll see if I'm right again this year, but that's it on that. The biggest surprise of 2023. My man here says the biggest surprise to me would have to be DeJuan Jones coming off and playing as well as he did at right tackle. Absolutely. I don't know. To me, that wasn't a surprise. Like, it just wasn't a surprise to me because I thought that DeJuan Jones was obviously going to be very good in the NFL. I just think that that's one of those things that people overthought. I didn't think there was a real chance. Like, I wasn't nervous when they put DeJuan Jones in. Honestly, from everything that we had saw from him before, I was kind of excited that DeJuan Jones got to play because I think it was pretty obvious to everybody once camp started. That dude's the future at that position. Full Dork says, Biggest surprise to me is that the refs helped us win 2 games. Never seen that before ever in my life. 2 favorable ref crews was amazing to see. That's a good point. The comments from this video are from, yes, the Browns can beat the Jaguars. This is a video I did earlier this week. SWL Lion says, I agree with your assessment. If Cleveland can make the playoffs, given the injuries to top players like Chubb and Watson, it would be quite the accomplishment. And you're right. It's really simple. If they get pressure, the quarterback tackle, get to the quarterback and tackle well, they'll be fine. Yeah. I think it's not a super difficult road for the Browns going forward. Next video is good news for the Browns. We finally got some good news in this week. Ryan says, never as good as your best. Oh, Ryan quoted me saying, never as good as your best game and never as bad as your worst is a hard quote. I forget who I get that from, but that's a common like coaching quote that you'll hear out there, is that you're never as good as your best game, never as bad as your worst. And that's true in the NFL, right? A lot of people get caught up in how they played in this game versus how they played in that game. The truth is that the league is a week-to-week league, and you just need to take every game for what it is, the win or loss that week. Nothing more, nothing less. That's it. I'm not saying don't get excited after a win. I'm not saying don't get sad after a loss. But what I am saying is that a win that week only means one thing. You won that week. A loss that week only means one thing. You lost that week. We can explore the things and the trends in the other, but it's important to keep that in mind and keep that trend in your head when you're evaluating these things, because it can be real easy to get lost in that and think that the season's over because you lost 2 games back to back, when that just simply isn't the case. It just means that you lost 2 games in 2 weeks. You could win 2 games in 2 weeks. Don't mean you're going to the Super Bowl, right? So the inverse is true if you don't win 2 games in 2 weeks. This video earlier this week, this might be the dumbest Browns controversy of all time, a video about people's reaction to Deshaun Watson watching a Browns game. This guy, Blaine, had, I'm gonna be real, most people agreed, but I wanted to bring in somebody who disagreed because I wanted to hear them out. Blaine Stevenson said, I love your content. I agree with you most of the time. But to me personally, it tells me who he is. He is an employee and he's doing what he's allowed to do, but he's not a teammate. He is not invested. He's collecting a paycheck. I know, Q, you have a special love for him, so I ultimately hope I'm wrong, but he is a waste of time to even talk about. See, you're confusing thinking I have a special love for a guy who, in this video, I told you there are 30 valid reasons to not like him. I'm not a big fan of him as a person. I don't know if that's ever not come across, but some people still confuse me with somebody who thinks that Deshaun Watson's like this amazing dude. I don't think he's an amazing dude. I believe some of the stuff that's been accused of him. So I don't get why people always come at me like that just because I'm not willing to be ridiculous about it. And that tells me more about where people are at, right? You are so deep in willing to be ridiculous about it that you're taking a picture of this man sitting in a suite, minding his own business, and you're extracting from that all of this. That don't seem crazy to you? Blaine, if I had somebody pull up a picture of your profile, just like your profile picture, right? And I showed that to somebody and somebody looked at your profile picture and said, you know what? To me personally, this profile picture tells me everything about who this guy is. He's an employee. He's not a good teammate. He's not a good friend. He's just here for a paycheck and all this, and he's terrible. You would think that that person reacting to your picture like that is crazy, because it is. Why would you not put that same logic into reacting to somebody being in a suite? The same thing Nick Chubb was doing, by the way. You got to realize you're being ridiculous. You got to realize you're being ridiculous. Really, really. Like, if I get it, you don't like Deshaun Watson. It's not required just because you don't like somebody to be ridiculous about them. And honestly, you make things better for that person when you choose to be ridiculous. Because like I said in that video, and like I'll continue to say, there are good reasons to not like Deshaun Watson. Him watching the game in the suite, not one of them. And the more you harp on stuff like that, the more you make the outrage about him seem stupid. The more petty you make this feel to everybody, and the more likely you are to be ignored in the larger context of it, which means that the people who are potentially victims of what he was accused of are also going to get ignored because of this goofiness that you're doing. You're not helping your point. You're counterproductive towards your point. This is why I always say, if you don't like somebody, it's important that you don't reach. It's important that you don't make that stretch, because when you get caught stretching, everybody sees it, and that just kills the whole argument. Whether it's valid or not, it kills it. Got to stop doing this. People are so eager to stretch when they don't have to. It makes no sense. But that's my thoughts on that. Hopefully you can understand where I'm coming from, Blaine, on that. But I think you're just being kind of low-key insane by taking that much from an image of this man sitting in a suite. It's too much, man. It's too much. At some point, you got to realize you're being ridiculous. We have gotten mad at Deshaun Watson for getting injured this year. Remember that? People are upset at him for getting injured. And now for watching his team play. Keep in mind, he was at the practices all week. He was checked in. He's rehabbing. He's trying to get back on the field. He played the last game he played. He played with a broken shoulder and a high ankle sprain. That don't sound like somebody who's not in it to win it. Again, pick the battles, because you guys are picking some terrible battles with Deshaun Watson. Doesn't make any sense. There are perfectly fine battles you can pick with Deshaun. Why pick these stupid battles? It just makes everybody who's on this side look so stupid. I don't get it. But that's it. Y'all have a great day. Have a better night.